PREDA Foundation. The first speaker will be Francis Bernido Jr. Mr. Francis Bernido Jr. has worked in various capacities with the PREDA Foundation since 2001. So that's over 20 years of work, sir. 24. He was Executive Director from 2012 to 2019, Vice President, and is currently the President. He was instrumental in the expansion of the PREDA Foundation services to children during the past 20 years. He is a graduate of Olongapo City Science High School in 1996. He has a bachelor's degree in history. I'm an historian too. From the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, UP Diliman. Yeah, my university. Sekolah ng Bayan! And a master's degree in public management from the University of the Philippines Extension Program in Olongapo City. He is a postgraduate diploma in children, youth and development from the Institute of Social Studies, Erasmus University in The Hague, Netherlands. And he's also a licensed professional teacher, LPT. He is the father of 2 boys, aged 14 and 12, and I invite him to the podium. Francis.
Sorry about that. Okay, thank you. So, Francis Bernido, President of PREDA Foundation. So, for the past several days, we've heard about calls for transparency and accountability from the Catholic Church. But for my talk this afternoon, I would like to focus on what services are available for the victims. Let's say after this conference, after last Wednesday's press conference, you get a report about clerical sexual abuse. You get a report about trafficking of children. So what do you do with that report? So this is what we at PREDA are doing for the past several years. So PREDA Foundation was established in 1974 by Father Shea, but we have been involved in a lot of social issues in Olongapo City, especially Olongapo City being the host of the largest U.S. naval base outside of the U.S. mainland. So in Olongapo City, there's a lot of social issues brought about by the naval base. But it was only in 1996, after the local government code was passed in the Philippines, when PREDA started a Center for Victims of Abuse. That's because after the local government code was passed, the government, the social services was devolved to local governments. And a lot of local governments nationwide were not prepared to provide social services to the victims. And PREDA was asked by the DSWD to start this program. So since then, we could estimate that PREDA has helped more than 1,000 children survivors of sexual abuse, commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking, including online sexual abuse and exploitation. So, based on our experience on the cases of the children that we've helped for the past year, actually, we can say that there are abusers everywhere. Abusers are in all disciplines, they are in all fields. We do not know if we are faced with an abuser or not. So, but the abusers of the children in our care are mostly and exclusively children that they trust. And most of them are victims of domestic sexual abuse. But that also goes to say that aside from that, we've helped children who have been victimized by teachers, pastors, and priests, local officials like barangay officials, and municipal and city officials. So, why is it that we talk about abuse, and yet, for example, when we talk about clerical child sexual abuse, and yet when we ask ourselves, where are the victims? It's difficult actually to identify and locate the victims. And that's because there's a lot of reasons why children do not disclose being abused. And this is what our children at PREDA experience. For example, number one, they were threatened with harm if they tell someone. A lot of the abusers told the victims that he would hurt the victim. And sometimes he tells the victim that he would not only hurt her, but he would also hurt her other siblings and her mother. So for the victim, sometimes she thinks that if the threat is only onto her person, she could endure it, she could bear it. But then if the threat is extended to younger siblings and to her mother, and so that effectively silences her. They are made to believe that other adults will not believe them. For example, a father would tell her own daughter whom he abused. Who would believe you that your own father abused you? And we could also say that who would believe someone who would say that she was abused by the parish priest? Because the victims believe that no one will believe them, then they keep the trauma to themselves. Thirdly, victims often blame themselves for the abuse. So it is like victim blaming in society is ingrained in their mentality and psychology. They blame themselves for wearing that is something skimpy, for being too close to the teacher, for example. So they blame themselves. And so in this case, for example, we always tell the children that there is nothing to be ashamed, that they do not have to blame themselves, especially when they are below the age of sexual consent in the Philippines. Sometimes they feel that they consented to it, but we tell them that the law and psychology says that when you are below 16, you cannot give consent to any sexual activity. Fourthly, children do not understand the abuse to be harmful, and they maintain secrecy because sexual matters are not discussed in the household. So this is now a big issue in the Philippines, especially since a lot of the senators withdrew their signatures on the Comprehensive Sexuality Education Bill. Sex is never talked about in Filipino families. So many children do not disclose sexual abuse immediately after it happens. In fact, many children do not disclose the abuse for years. This is very unfortunate because of this, a lot of the children in our care have been abused, sexually assaulted, raped many times over. And sometimes even their younger siblings have become victims as well. Many adult survivors of child sexual abuse have never disclosed the abuse to anyone, and when children do disclose, they usually tell a friend or peer. Others disclose to their parents, particularly their mothers. So our experience is that victims do not go to the barangay, that's the local official, or to the police, or to the social worker. They want someone they know and trust and tell their story as if asking for help. So in our activities at PREDA, in our community-based prevention programs, we target not only the victims but everyone. We tell the people, the students, to be that friend to whom the victim can report, and to be that friend who knows where to go if her friend is abused. Children may show us rather than tell us something is upsetting them. This is a very important message, especially to teachers, because a lot of the victims of abuse that were referred to us, they exhibited self-destructive behavior. For example, in the first quarter of the academic year, they might perform very well, but in the third quarter after she was abused, the performance in school might drop. So when teachers do not know about these issues, that drop in performance is oftentimes interpreted as delinquency, when in fact it's only a result of the abuse, whether in the family or outside of the family. So there may be many reasons for changes in the behavior, but if you notice a combination of warning signs, it may be time to consider asking the experts for help. So this is what we tell teachers, social workers, and barangay officials. How PREDA addresses these problems? So these are our different programs. PREDA provides a holistic range of biopsychosocial services designed to restore the social functioning of child abuse and exploitation survivors and those at risk of being abused and traffic. First, we have preventive education efforts. In these activities, we target both rights holders and duty bearers. So we target pupils in the elementary schools, students in high schools, and even out of school youth through the Sangguniang Kabataan or Youth Council. But we also target duty bearers such as parents, teachers, police officers, and local social workers and village officials so they know what to do if ever they receive cases of child abuse. In the past years, a lot of cases of child abuse in the Philippines are settled out of court, settled amicably out of court. So that means the abusers pay a sum of money, not to the child, but to the parents of the child, and the child is silenced and does not receive any further help and therapy for the trauma that she would experience. So we challenge that in the places where we work, such that now we receive a lot of reports from teachers, from police officers, and from local government social workers. So these are just some of our sessions in the community. We are able to do this by using mechanisms that already exist. For example, in order for us to go to mainstream child protection in the public schools in the Philippines, we make use of the child protection policy of the Department of Education to be able to reach out to the barangay officials. We work with the Department of Interior and local government. We work with the local government officials and tell them that they need these child protection seminars so that the locality will pass the child-friendly local government audit, so that the local government unit would have a seal of good local governance. So in that way, it is mutually beneficial. It benefits PREDA Foundation in the sense that we are able to implement activities that will protect the children, and at the same time, we are welcomed by the localities because it helps them fulfill their mandate. Rescue and protection. We have social workers in our payroll who are always ready to conduct rescue operations. So rescue operations are conducted when we receive reports. We always coordinate with the police and the government social workers because it is the government social workers that have the mandate and the immunity from suit. They could take out and rescue a child from any abusive situation, even within the family, as long as there is disclosure from the child that she was sexually abused. That immunity actually was reinforced in 2023 through this Department of Justice Circular number 17. Local social workers are immune from suit. That is why we work with them for us to be able to rescue these children. So right now, we have about 60 children in our care, but we are actually always, every day, responsible for the lives of 120 children because we have 3 residential therapeutic centers at PREDA. The biggest one is our Center for Girls who are victims of sexual abuse and trafficking, but we also have 2 separate centers for boys who are abused, neglected, and children at risk of becoming in conflict with the law in Zambales and Cebu. So in total, every day we are responsible for the lives of 120 children. So in the PREDA homes, PREDA therapeutic homes, we simulate a home-like environment. We try to provide what is deprived from these children. But aside from our residential programs, we also have aftercare and outreach programs. And through these aftercare and outreach programs, we are currently providing psychosocial services and financial assistance to 2 victims of clerical sexual abuse. One case is in the north, in the city of Tugigaraw, in Cagayan province, and the other case is in southern Cebu. So all the children at PREDA are educated through different modes. They go to a formal school. There is alternative learning system for them. There is an open high school for those who are not ready for a rigid environment in the formal school. We have productivity and skills trainings for them. Baking and crochet. are available for the children, but these are not actually livelihood skills. We do these activities not to provide them with livelihood, but as part of the different therapeutic social activities that we give to them. The most important part of the program is what we call emotional release therapy. This is uniquely developed by PREDA. Father Shea started this in 1976 when PREDA was still a center for drug dependence. The therapy allows the child victims to express their pain and anger by crying and shouting at their trafficker and abusers in a padded therapy room. With counseling and support from the PREDA-trained therapists, the victims are able to cope, become emotionally free, and capable to speak with conviction and credibility. This contributes to their empowerment and confidence building, which is very important when seeking justice on behalf of the victims. As we know, a lot of child sexual abuse cases are done in secret. It's always done in secret, in fact. So it's always the word of the victim against the word of the perpetrator. And so it is important that the victims are empowered and that they are able to talk about what happened to them, tell these to their counselors and to the court. Because without this straightforward and credible witness, we can never have a successful prosecution. And that's what we at PREDA are doing with the victims that we are caring for. We are empowering them so that they could tell their story to the police, to the prosecutor, and to the defense lawyer especially. So legal assistance is provided by PREDA. It involves gathering of evidence and testimony. What's this evidence? Number one would be birth certificate from the PSA or the Philippine Statistics Authority, and testimonies or statements from the victim and the witness. Conducting mock trials is very important. That prepares the victims for questions by the defense lawyer, and convincing other witnesses to give statements in support of the victims. Who are these other witnesses? They may not have witnessed the actual abuse itself, but those whom the child first reported the abuse is vital because it establishes the pattern of behavior of the child after she was abused. So that includes perhaps the teacher or the friend or the parent of the friend that could testify to support the accusation of the child victim. Our social workers escort the child victims and we attend court hearings to protect the victims from intimidation by the suspects or by the family and supporters of the suspects. So on average, for the past several years, we have had 20 convictions a year. So for a small non-government organization like PREDA, that is very significant, especially given how inefficient and let's say sometimes corrupt is the justice system in the Philippines. At the fastest, a legal case in the Philippines can be resolved in 2 years. At the fastest. That would be a record if a case is resolved in 2 years. We are very fortunate in Olongapo and Zambales because we have 3 family courts in Olongapo and Zambales. So we can have cases resolved within 2 years. But the challenge is in other cities and municipalities where there is no family court or where there is a big backlog of cases in the family courts. For example, that case in Tuguegarao City against Father Carol Israel, that was filed in 2022. And based on court records that we got from the prosecutor and from the victim, if no hearings would be canceled, that will last until 2026. So it's been almost 3 years now, and yet the victim has not yet finished testifying on direct examination. So most likely this case will extend after 2026 because she has to testify on direct examination and then she has to be grilled by the defense lawyer. So we are actually hopeful that it will be resolved before 2026, but that hope is gone after several cancellations already since 2023. But what is actually significant in this case in Tuguegarao is that this is the only case of clerical sexual abuse in the Philippines where the accused cleric is in jail. That means because in this case, because not in this case, that means because the cases against Carol Israel are non-bailable. Cases are non-bailable. So what are the cases that are non-bailable? When you say sexual assault of a child in the Philippines, that's bailable. You assault a child in the Philippines, that's bailable. Lascivious conduct, that's bailable. It's only rape by carnal knowledge of a child that is non-bailable. And that is what he allegedly did to this 15-year-old girl in Tuguegarao. So that is why, even if the case is prolonged, that is also to his detriment because he is in jail. However, the challenge is that when cases are delayed, victims experience fatigue, they are vulnerable to influence by the suspects, by the supporters of the suspects, even by the Catholic Church. In this case, for example, we know that this girl was offered college education by another diocesan priest in exchange for dropping the cases. What evidence do we have? We have the screenshots of messages from this priest to the victim. So, 20 court cases on average every year, but in 2024, actually, we have a bumper year in 2024 because we had 27 convictions in 2024. So that's what empowering the victims does. They're able to tell their story in a credible and straightforward manner. The judges believe them. So it's actually very easy to file the cases. These are children that are already empowered. Sometimes victims they don't know what it entails when filing cases. Sometimes they think that that they have to spend a lot of money, when in fact you don't have to spend a lot of money when filing cases. Like the police, you don't have to pay the police. There's no filing fee. But the challenge actually is the difficulty in going through the system. Sometimes you are greeted by unfriendly police officers, even police women who are assigned to the Women and Children Protection Desk, unfriendly prosecutors who ask questions as if blaming the child, and that is why assistance from social workers is always very important. So, like I said, in Olongapo and Zambales, we have 3 family courts. This is the judge referring children to PREDA when the child victims do not attend the court hearings. It is important to protect the victims. If you've read the website of Bishop Accountability, a lot of the cases are dismissed. Some of the cases are provisionally dismissed. It doesn't actually mean that the crime did not happen. It only means that the prosecution was unsuccessful, primarily because there was no victim witness to testify in court. So that for the side of the perpetrator, that's the most effective way to get rid of the legal case against him, to disappear the victim. That is why it's very important to protect the victim. And these friendly judges, when the victim survivors do not attend court hearings, they will refer the children for protective custody to PREDA so that our social workers can present the victims in court when required by the prosecution. So what are obstacles to achieving justice? Number 1, failure of police to arrest suspects. We have a lot of perpetrators, sexual abuse, sexual assault, who are at large. And the police are not capable of arresting them. When suspects move from one city to another, it's almost impossible for the police to arrest that suspect. It's that easy for the suspects to elude arrest. There is no database like what you see in the movie where the suspect uses his credit card and then there's a red light. The police are warned and informed that the suspect used his credit card in this city. There's no such system in the Philippines. In fact, what's happening now, the police come to our center, ask our social workers, where can we locate these suspects? Sometimes our social workers know because of our social investigation done in preparing the social case studies. That means locating the family members in the other provinces where the suspect might be hiding. So because police are not able to arrest the suspects, cases are archived. That means it cannot move forward from that point. It is archived. And that is one of the many reasons why there is a big backlog of cases in all levels of the courts in the Philippines. And this big backlog of cases is the reason why the Supreme Court in late 2024 issued a circular to all judges at all levels saying or ordering the judges to ask the private complainants if they are still interested in pursuing the cases, so that if the private complainants are no longer interested in pursuing the cases will already be provisionally dismissed. So justice gone because the police is not able to arrest the suspects. Second challenge is disappeared victims and witnesses. Prosecution in the Philippines is still very much reliant on the testimony of the victims and witnesses. Although the Supreme Court has recently issued a decision saying that prosecution can still be had even without the victims. But in practice, on the ground, that is not yet done. Without the victims, without the witnesses, prosecution is bound to fail. So that is why centers like PREDA protect children so that they can be presented in the court to testify, to tell the truth in the court. And thirdly, inordinate delay in resolving cases, first at the level of the prosecutor. There are several provinces in the Philippines where there are no prosecutors or there are very few prosecutors. And because there are very few prosecutors, they cannot resolve cases within the 90-day period allowed by the Department of Justice. And after the level of the prosecutor, there is also inordinate delay in hearing cases at the level of the family courts. And there are no family courts even in some cities and provinces in the Philippines, which is more or bigger problem. But even in cities where there are family courts, there is still delay, like this case in Cagayan and this case in Cebu. The case in Cebu will also take until after 2026. So these are just some of the obstacles that we on the ground, at the grassroots have experienced in the past years. So these are the different activities that we do for our children, other therapeutic activities. But what happens to them when they recover? They are integrated to a family that is capable and responsible, a family that can care and send them to school. But we also have aftercare services managed by an aftercare social worker. We continue to monitor the legal cases. It doesn't mean that the child has testified, the legal case is finished. We monitor the cases until it is resolved. We provide educational assistance to the victims because a lot of the victims belong to very poor families in the Philippines and they are prone to influence, especially bribery of educational support up to college, money. So we have to intervene so that justice will prevail in most of these cases. So that is what we at PREDA do for the past several years until now. So we'll hear more about it from Father Shea, member of the Missionary Society of St. Columbans, established PREDA in 1974. So we celebrated our 50 years actually this year. Thank you.